for most of us, it's a very poignant day to remember people. And I think nationally, the Royal Hospital and the Chelsea pensioners represent the wider veteran community. So we like to make sure that we represent the nation's feeling appropriately.
And that representation, Alan, talk to me about that.
Well, I'm the youngest of the Chelsea pensioners at the moment, and I joined Outreach so we can do exactly what Johnny said, is to get out there, meet fellow comrades who are possibly not in the position that we're in at the moment. And Chelsea provides a good support of that with others. And I've got that feeling that I go back and remember those people who I knew and are not with me today. And it is very poignant. And we provide a military background. When you're at Chelsea, you're talking to each other the same language because they've all done it before, they've all seen it before, but they just put it in a different language or a different time, and it's very rewarding.
David, Alan's made the point that you're older than him, but we'll skip over that.
Not in age, maybe in the length of time I've been here. But,
right, OK.
That's what he meant.
That's what he meant, right. time at the hospital. And I think, though, about age, we kind of think in this moment about the First World War 107 years ago. We kind of think about times past, but it's important also to think of the veteran community who are here today, people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, in Bosnia, in Northern Ireland. You know, that veteran community is still with us and going strong.
Those veterans will be coming to us very shortly. At the moment, we've got veterans now, most of their army life has been tied up with Northern Ireland. And that's where I remember most of my time with Northern Ireland and the guys that lost their lives there. And I remember them specifically on this particular day and the days before. And it's just one of these things that we remember all people, veterans who've lost their lives in all wars.
Your remembrance is deeply personal, deeply so. How important is it for you to know that there is a nation that also takes that moment to try and understand to some degree what that was like?
It's very important, and I think that we need to keep that going. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take, but we're still remembering the First World War. But at the moment, I'm doing history into Waterloo, so we're still remembering them as well. We will always remember the dead.
And Alan, I think of the iconic red coat, and I think of being at King's Cross railway station last Christmas, and there was a Chelsea pensioner who was making his way, I assume, to family, was treated like a rock star. The connection, the recognition that people have with the public. What's that like for you on a personal basis?
It is. You do not know the power of the scarlet. You can't describe it. Everyone that sees you realises immediately what you represent, what the scarlet represents. And that goes all ages. Young mums and dads brings the children across. Can you explain to them why you're wearing the red scarlet? And, of course, the elderly realise what it means, and the Chelsea pensioner. Yes, on my first day out, the power of this uniform just hit me.
Did it change you?
Yes, it did. It strengthened the thoughts that I had about Chelsea. You know, what I'd been told, but that within 3 minutes of that lady offering to buy me my paper, I thought, and as she said, I said, you don't have to buy it. And she said, I'm not buying it, my grandfather is buying it. And I thought, that's where I am, and it's a nice place to be.
It's a lovely place to be. You have 300 or so people with you, and I'm just cognizant that there's roughly 1.8 million former servicemen and women in the UK. It's a number, actually, that I was surprised how large that figure is. What is being done, what can we do as a society for the people who don't have the benefit of being in Chelsea, but do have the service that they've given to this nation?
I mean, there are a lot of service charities out there, and the Royal British Legion is one that springs to mind, particularly at this time of year, but there are many others, SAFA. But from the Royal Hospital perspective, we're trying to, and we're succeeding, I think. We've been doing it for about 3 years with our Veterans Outreach Programme, which is, there are 300 lucky souls, Army souls, who are residents at the Royal Hospital, which is a retirement home with a care home within. It's not actually a hospital. But we're trying to spread our footprint much further afield by inviting veterans from all 3 services into events that we have at the Royal Hospital and going to them. And we're going to places where our target group are older veterans, because that's where our expertise, such as it is, lies. And within that target group, the bullseye are those who are lonely and have become disconnected. So trying to find them is quite a challenge. We've had success in doing so, and it's bringing them back into the Army community. And what we're really offering is community and comradeship, which is the golden thread. And I think if you're a serviceman, if you're one of the blue light organisations, the police, the fire service, that fact that you've put yourself at risk in public service actually bonds you together. And even though people would have left the armed services several years ago, that bond is still strong and it remains. And that's really what we're trying to regenerate in those who perhaps have become disconnected. And we're doing that. We're doing it particularly in the southeast at the moment, but we're aiming to go nationwide with it.
How important is that connection, that community, that sense of togetherness for you?
Very much so. Once you put on this scarlet coat, not red as you say.
I'm very colourblind, so I can but apologise.
It was definitely scarlet. We get into trouble if it's not. Guards were red. Yeah. Once you put this uniform on, then you grow a few feet, because you're proud to put it on, and you represent not the people that just in Chelsea, but you represent the whole of the veterans community, and we are the face of them, I should think you could say. If we mess things up, then everybody knows about it. That's the trouble.
You've not messed up the scarlet. That was on me. Gentlemen, we really appreciate you coming in. I'm sure I speak for so many people. We really appreciate you for everything you've done as well. So thank you wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Coverage of Armistice Day continues here on Sky News. Let's bring in our events commentator, Alistair Bruce, who can bring us more.
Welcome to everybody here in Whitehall in the centre of London, where only on Sunday the King and members of the royal family laid their wreaths along with politicians, representatives of the Commonwealth and all the veterans whose poppies are still preserved here. And yet later today at 11 o'clock, the Western Front Association will hold their annual act of remembrance. At the same time that all across the nation, those who wish to can stop for 2 minutes silence to remember the Armistice in 1918, when the guns finally went silent on the conflagration, the terrifying war that had introduced the power of the machine gun and other hitherto unknown forms of inflicting death on either side, which had gone on from 1914 to the end of the war, mostly in a static way, where the armies of Imperial Germany and the Allies met, from Flanders through France and all the way to the frontier with Switzerland. And almost every family was affected by the terrible loss of life and the injuries inflicted, principally on young men who came back to London. And when the Western Front Association representatives, coming with schools today and cadets, come here to form a hollow square around the Cenotaph, they will bring with them the pipes and drums of the London Scottish Regiment, part of the Scots Guards, and they still wear the hodden grey kilts that their forebears wore when fighting, in fact, on the 31st of October 1914, and took terrible loss of life. And it was the loss of London Scots that was the first terrible news of the impact of that war here in the capital city, and so there is provenance to their piping today. The cenotaph itself, made of white Portland stone, which holds at its top the empty tomb, the cenotaph, into which all families could place the thoughts of their own lost brother, son, father, or family member. And it is a simple design, and on this side we see the ensign, the flag of the Royal Air Force on the left, the light blue, in the middle the Union flag, and on the right what is affectionately known as the Red Duster, the red ensign which was worn by most of the merchant ships that brought food to these islands during both the First and Second World War and faced the scourge of German U-boat activity. It's quite a crowd gathers here, as you can see, in front of the health department on the far side there, and we're standing with our camera looking from what was the old Foreign Office, now the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And as I say, it was onto this tarmac here on Sunday that the leaders of the nation came for the national act of remembrance. But that is a shifting date. What never shifts is the date of the end of the First World War, the 11th day of the 11th month of November in 1918. I was saying how it was a great irony that one of the principal events that started the First World War was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. He was the heir to be the next emperor of Austria. And he was driving in a car which had, ironically, the number plate A111118. And who could have known that Armistice at the end of 4 years of war would be Armistice on the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. It is, I think, one of the great ironies of that First World War. Shortly, the 4 members of King's Colour Squadron, Royal Air Force, will take their positions at the 4 corners of this cenotaph. They will hold vigil, and on the first stroke of 11 o'clock, they will reverse arms, which means that they will turn their rifle pointing to the ground, and they will bow their heads during the period that the respect to the 2-minute silence and the wreath laying takes place. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, it will be a pleasure for us to have you with us during that 2-minute silence. And I think it will be special to see the gathering here of the Western Front Association and the people that they have brought. And in particular, we will see how they will wish to mark this uniquely in 2025.
Alistair Bruce there. We will return to Alistair in a few moments. I just want to quickly take you to the BBC and our arts and entertainment. Images from the Cenotaph too. Let's just return you to these images of the Queen at Paddington, shall we? Just been seeing her meeting and greeting some of the veterans there who are at the station. The Queen will be taking part in events there. Catherine will be taking part in events at the National Memorial Arboretum, and of course a key focus on the Cenotaph in central London as well, just a few miles away from Paddington. Let's bring back in our commentator Alistair Bruce.
Yes, the Queen came on the train from Chippenham today. She was bringing poppies to Paddington, which has been one of the traditions that the Great Western Railway has maintained. And for Her Majesty, she's just arrived. There are a number of cadets she's being introduced to, and she will take part during the 2-minute silence of laying her wreath here at the memorial to those Great Western Railway people who lost their lives. And earlier on, the Princess of Wales arrived at Al Rawas, where the Armed Forces Memorial will be the focus for an act of remembrance too. It was designed with a semicircular wall through which, if the sun was shining, it would pass through the gap and land straight on the central wreath, designed to mark that principal moment of 11 o'clock on the 11th day, and referring back to 1918 at 11 o'clock, and received there by the welcoming committee. But it's at the Cenotaph that we see the pipes and drums of the London Scottish Regiment, bringing on those who are marching to play their part at this act of remembrance. And cadets from the Army, Navy and Air Force equivalents and cadet organisations have all come today from different parts of London and further afield in order to play their part in this act of remembrance as they advance to their positions and will dress off in due time. And members of the Western Front Association, which is committed to maintaining an understanding of the First World War, are themselves making their way just to the left of our picture to witness and take part in this 2-minute silence. There are a number of people who are going to be coming to be the main participants of this, including the guest of honour, who is Mark Smith, the medal expert, very often on television talking about medals, and he will be laying a wreath later on. Meanwhile, at Al Rawas, you can see as the central wreath with the distant held high the casualty of war. Here the names of those who are the victims of battle or military service life since 1945 are all remembered. The Princess of Wales, representing the King.
We meet in the presence of God to commit ourselves to work in penitence and faith for reconciliation between the nations, that all people may together live in freedom, justice and peace. We come to pray for all who in bereavement, disability and pain continue to suffer the consequences of fighting and terror. We come to remember with thanksgiving and sorrow those whose lives in world wars and conflicts past and present have been given and taken away. Would you please be seated? Let us confess to God the sins and shortcomings of the world, its pride, its selfishness, its greed, the evil divisions and hatreds. Let us confess our share in what is wrong and our failure to seek and establish that peace which God wills for his children. Father, we have sinned against heaven and against you, and are not worthy to be called your children. We turn to you, asking that you have mercy on us and teach us to live rightly in love and peace with you and with all humanity. Amen. Almighty God, have mercy upon you, pardon and deliver you from all your sins, confirm and strengthen you in all goodness, and keep you in life eternal, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Would you please stand if you're able?
The act of remembrance continues as they approach, as we do in different locations, the moment of 11 o'clock when all will respect the 2-minute silence and reflect on the armistice at 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month. At the Cenotaph, the Western Front Association are now in position. Senior representatives of the armed forces about to join this event, coming from the Ministry of Defence, to play their part in this 2-minute silence. And it is to the Cenotaph that all thoughts come on these occasions. Meanwhile, at Paddington Station, Her Majesty the Queen is with the Lord Lieutenant of Greater London and senior representatives of the capital city as they prepare for their 2-minute silence at the Great Western Railway Memorial, which is on the walls there, and they will respect that in a couple of minutes. With the last post, they prepare for their 2-minute silence. Meanwhile, back at the Cenotaph, the true focus of the nation being the Cenotaph, and people, wherever they are, taking their moment to remember and recall the loss of life. The members of the King's Colour Squadron, the Royal Air Force, reversed arms. And so wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, think on those who left their homes, who went to battle and did not come home. We will remember them, and we will always remember them, as this is our duty to the dead. You're watching Sky News, preparing for the Armistice 2-minute silence here at the Cenotaph in central London, where the Western Front Association prepare to mark 2 minutes silence. The Queen has laid her wreath at the memorial, having come by train from Chippenham with poppies to Paddington, and leading others, while the Princess of Wales at Armistice will also lay her wreath shortly. With the 2-minute silence concluded around the United Kingdom, we visited the Queen in Paddington, the Princess of Wales at Armistice. The wreaths will be laid, and on behalf of the Prince of Wales, the Princess of Wales lays his wreath here at Armistice. Sadly, the sun has not come through the gap in the wall here to mark this moment, but her reflection on behalf of the nation. Wreath layers will step forward in order of seniority and also on behalf of the organisations that they represent: the Deputy Lieutenant, the High Sheriff, and the senior representative of the Armed Forces at Armistice will be the next to lay their wreaths. Meanwhile, at the Cenotaph, and also in the Houses of Parliament in Westminster Hall, the Lord Speaker lays his wreath just underneath the window that holds the coats of arms of members of both houses who were killed in war. A large number of members of Parliament, not least Winston Churchill, in the First World War, volunteered to serve in battle. So also did a number of the House of Lords.
The ode of remembrance, and the Lord Speaker will recite the Cathedral.
The garden or field of remembrance with the Scots Guards, my regiment there, their little area picked out. Individual members of the regiment can come and place their small crosses to recall names in this grassy area covered in autumn leaves. The wreaths being laid in groups as they're watched by school children who have come from different parts of London to witness this moment. And in particular today, for the Western Front Association, the cores that were raised in China and the small island of Maui, northeast of New Zealand, who have come here today in order to lay their wreaths, and point out that the civilian services who were called to serve are also always remembered. In Cardiff, taking us to Wales, where so many in the Second World War were excused military service to continue working in the mines to keep the nation strong. Edinburgh, where the rain pours down upon this scene, in Princes Street Gardens, where even the cameraman has to do his work to make sure that we can see these pictures. I know Edinburgh very well, and there the singing will be no less keen to remember the Scots who lost their lives in battles. For the nation at the Cenotaph, those wreaths continue to be laid as the 4 sentries keeping vigil have their arms reversed and their heads bowed. The 2-minute silence marks the conclusion this year of the Remembrance season, a season principally led by the Royal British Legion and Poppy Scotland, who raise money through the poppies, which have been generously purchased, and that money is used to help wounded ex-service people and their families deal with marching through life to the constant drum of those difficulties, and yet with a little support to make it a bit easier. But with the Princess of Wales present in the Arboretum, music taken from the film Band of Brothers, in which Easy Company is followed through from D-Day and the terrible battles towards the end of the Second World War. Music that evokes loss of life, loss of young life, loss of life of young people that we come to know. And that is the essence of remembrance. Meanwhile, in Belfast, just outside the City Hall, where only recently the Irish Guards came to mark their close association with the city and laid their wreaths and made their respects to Irish Guardsmen who were killed in the First and Second World War. During the First World War, Ireland played its part with the sectarian divide that might otherwise have caused difficulties overlooked as Protestants and Roman Catholics fought side by side for what was then the Empire. And it is always remembered that so many on each side of that ancient divide lost their lives and are remembered at these memorials. It is the Cenotaph where the nation focuses its attention, a memorial that is so frequently at the centre of London transport, whizzing this way and that, people rushing to and from work, people coming back from evenings out and fun enjoyed. As there we see Brother Nigel Cave, who is the chaplain to the Western Front Association, and he will lead in service and prayers shortly as the time comes. I see in the background a naval officer from one of the NATO countries and also a Royal Marine with his green beret. On the left of the picture, those cadets from the Air Cadets, from the Army Cadet Force and from the Sea Cadets, watching on a next generation who learn about the issue of remembrance and who know the costs of battle. Nigel Farage has joined the Western Front Association. Also next to him on the right, Brigadier Maciejewski, who runs the Army Museum not far from here, and a chance for all those who represent the armed forces here today to join in prayer and contemplation before the lament is played by Pipe Major Jim Lucas of the London Scottish Pipes and Drums. But all the wreaths are important, and each of them laid by those organisations who have come to take part. Representatives today of the football associations and the football associations who did so much to raise PALS battalions who went off to fight. The footballers of their day laying down the opportunity to play in their leagues and going to fight in the trenches. And also representing traditions from around the world, coming here to play their part and represent so much that was given from across the old British Empire and traditions that are now increasingly remembered. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission has put a great deal of effort into recovering its position on honouring all names of those who lost their lives. There were some parts of the British Empire that were overlooked, and this is being addressed now as part of what is right and needs to be done. The Commonwealth War Graves, which are worth a visit for anybody who gets the chance, are maintained in perpetuity all across Europe, particularly along the Western Front, where the fighting just relentlessly went on for 4 years after the trenches were dug. And each night and each day, young soldiers were told it was their turn to go into no man's land and face the danger. In wet Edinburgh, a cross of red poppies carried by a lady to the field of remembrance there. I wonder what she thinks as she lays that on behalf of an organisation or her family, or just a sense of respect. At the moment, the representatives of the labour cause that were raised from amongst the Sikhs, the Chinese, and the Muslims, and the West Indians, in order, in their own regard, to play their part in the First World War. They are remembered here by the Western Front Association, as are the football associations. At the Arboretum, let's listen to the singing. And at the Cenotaph, we now prepare for hearing one of the readings that will be given.
Good morning. My name is Sergeant Leroy, and I wrote this poem inspired by my time in Afghanistan. It's called
On behalf of the Western Front Association,
thunderous applause throughout the land. Fate has dealt its terrible blow. Is this real? Filled with woe. All of the warriors that are in the keep hold each other and begin to weep at the news that we all feared. Their soul has gone and disappeared. Seeing faces glass-eyed and broken, stones in throats with no word spoken. Crimson Wreath, we shall remember all my people in November. Hearing the music that is played transports me back to that day. Crimson Wreath, we shall remember all of our people in November. Hollowed square, together as one, as we shed our tears in the sun. Many years have passed, but I'm not done, remembering all my tears in the sun.
Staff Sergeant remembering his own experiences in words to encapsulate this moment of reflection at the Armed Forces Memorial at Al Rawas, where his friends' names will be
Royal Highness,
in the walls.
brothers and sisters,
Remembered.
we are here to honour. We are here in humility, and we are here in hope. All around us in the sacred landscape, which is this arboretum, sitting at the very heart of our nation, all around us are memorials. Memorials honouring soldiers and civilians, men and women, people from this country and from overseas, people of differing backgrounds, faiths, beliefs, and lifestyles. Most recent among them, just 15 days ago, His Majesty the King was here to unveil a monument honouring the LGBT+ armed forces community. Whichever memorial we look at, what all the people remembered here have in common is that they gave of the best of themselves in the service of others. And here we are at the biggest memorial on this site to members of our country's armed forces who have been killed since the end of the Second World War, 80 years ago this year. More than 16,000 names are inscribed on the Portland stone panels around us, and we honour all of them, as on this Armistice Day, we honour all who have died in service of their country. But we also look at the blank spaces on this memorial, and we cannot help but wonder, how long will they remain blank? Whose children, whose partners, whose parents will find their names lovingly, painfully written here? It is sobering to reflect that there is room for about 15,000 more names to be added here. It is right that we are here to honour the dead and to honour veterans from 80 years ago and since who are still very much alive. Our instinct to honour comes from deep within, and it is inseparable from our instinct to love. We honour those who have served their country to the point of death because we recognise the truth of Jesus' words, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." As Arge's sonnet, which we've just heard, so poignantly put it, love is a compass, love is a bugle morning, love is sacrificing tomorrow so that a stranger can live today. And honour goes together with humility. As we remember with proud sadness lives lost in the service of others, and as we celebrate with glad appreciation lives lived in that same service, we are humbled. We are humbled by the grandeur which we humans can reach, and at the same time, we are humbled by the cruelty of which we are capable. And probably the best way to express our humility is to fall silent. That is why the solemn and precious 2 minutes of silence we kept together this morning are at the very heart of what we do today. And finally, honour and humility point us to a third H, which is hope. Because we can look at our world in two ways: as a place marred by savage violence, or as a place full of opportunities to build and to safeguard peace.
And we leave ROS, where the Right Reverend Dr. Michael Ipgrave gives his thoughts at the National Armed Forces Memorial. And at the Cenotaph, we hear the poem, The Soldier.
And it is called The Soldier. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam. A body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by the sons of home. And think, this heart, all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less, gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given. Her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter, learnt of friends and gentleness, in hearts of peace, under an English heaven.
Rupert Brooke's poem, The Soldier, by Nick Lucas there, as Pipe Major Jim McLucas plays the lament, Flowers of the Forest. And as he passes around the Cenotaph, each of the sentries holding vigil will come out of the reversed arms, raise their heads and shoulder arms. The parade marshal will now read the exhortation.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
And with that exhortation, the parade comes to an end here at the Cenotaph, with the young cadets watching and taking part as the Western Front Association has marked this year again the 111th year since the First World War began. At 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month in 2025, as Big Ben now strikes 11:30. This parade, which has made its respect and laid its wreaths, will prepare to leave as the military representatives go. Amongst the guests here today is the Secretary of State for Defence, the Right Honourable John Healey, who is now being led away, along with the Padre, from this parade, as the music of the pipes and drums of the London Scottish sound the end of the parade and lead all those taking part away from this act of remembrance, which is, in its own way, the end of the events to mark this season of remembrance here in the United Kingdom and around the Commonwealth. And wherever you are to watch this, the London Scottish, of course, still wearing exactly the same hodden grey kilts that their forebears wore when fighting in battle, having left jobs in London as bus drivers. In fact, they even took their London buses to Messines in order to transport them to and from the front. As a younger generation walk away with their own thoughts, it is a tradition that the London Scottish, as reservists as they were for a long time, now part of the Scots Guards, continue to maintain each year for the Western Front Association. It has been a remarkable opportunity here in London with your company to mark the anniversary of Armistice here, and we hope that wherever you are, you will be able to stop, to continue to remember the 2-minute silence and go about your life and enjoy the freedoms that have been won for you for one more year.
A poignant final thought there from our events commentator, Alistair Bruce, as we listen to the pipes at the Cenotaph. Our thanks also to our teams in Belfast, Edinburgh and Cardiff, who've brought us that moment of remembrance from across the United Kingdom as we mark the Armistice Day, when we remember those who gave their lives in the First World War and the wars that have followed since as well. 11 o'clock this morning, the UK honouring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, as Alistair was saying there, that 2-minute silence. Let's bring in the contemporary historian, Sir Anthony Selden, who joins us now on Sky News. Sir Anthony, good to have you with us. You've been undertaking a remarkable project over the last few months, a walk, and no ordinary walk, a walk that's brought you in close contact with people across Europe, and you've reflected on the issues that we've been talking about and remembering today. Just tell us more about what you've been discovering.
So, and what a remarkable ceremony that was. So the first walk was to mark out the Western Front way along the line of no man's land, the trenches, in the First World War. And that walk finished on the Swiss border where the trenches finished. And the second walk that I've just now completed and written The Path to Light about is from kilometre zero, where the First World War finished, to Auschwitz, where the Second World War finished morally, if you like. It was a 1,300-kilometre enterprise, and I was looking along the way for good women and good men who did not succumb to those forces of darkness and evil that Churchill talked about, the tyranny, but stood up for other human beings, stood up for liberty, for the dignity of each individual. And I found many remarkable examples of women and men, most of them unknown, at least to me, and they were inspiring. They're the figures of light. And as a teacher, someone who spent my life in schools, I think that we need more examples of good women, good men, to inspire our young people to show what they can do, because inspirational figures really matter. There's an inspirational figure there on the screens at the moment, if there is one.
We talk about the lessons, and I wonder what you make of how loudly we are hearing those stories, how well we are acknowledging those lessons, because you don't need me to tell you, history has a habit of repeating itself. And so those memories, those stories, those lessons serve as a warning to us. Are we heeding those warnings?
So this is interesting. When I took part in a BBC programme on the 50th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in 1995, it was all optimism. The Cold War had ended, East and West Germany had united, Russia was back in retreat, and it looked like the forces of good, civility, kindness, liberty, the rule of law were winning everywhere. Now, 30 years later, it seems that anti-Semitism, racism is on the rise, suppression of individual rights. Some of the people I met on this walk on the path to light was saying that the Third World War had already begun with Russian infiltration of the media, destabilization of their electoral and political systems. So I think we have to be ever, as Churchill said, we have to be ever awake, ever mindful that we cannot guarantee peace. We cannot guarantee democracy and human rights. We have to, every new generation has to find the meaning, and that's why today's events are so important, has to find their own role that they can play, because we all are responsible for building the civilized community that we all want to live in. And there are more forces of darkness out there than there were 30 years ago, than there were 10 years ago, and they must not and they will not prevail.
I'm interested for your thought here. We look at memorials, we look at the lists of names, the millions of people that were involved, who fought, who sacrificed, who partook in the fights for freedom over the course of time. And so often we frame conflict and war as somebody's war, that there is a leader that has decided and prescribed this conflict, but there are people at the heart of it. And I wonder to what degree you feel as though people can push back, ordinary men and women can push back against those forces of darkness that you described, how empowered they feel, how much power they have to maybe change the course that we currently maybe find ourselves in and work back towards that era of 30 years ago that you described a moment ago.
Well, that's why democracy is so important, because if we have a totalitarian country with all the ways of looking at our social media and manipulating and controlling people in the way that Orwell described so frighteningly, then we lose that agency. We have to fight for democracy. Democracy is in retreat globally, and in some established democracies today, there are worrying signs. We need to have a limited government. We need to have a freedom of opinion. We can't have the mob, whether from the left or the right, saying what people are allowed to say or not allowed to say. Freedom, liberty, democracy, we are all responsible until we get to that tipping point, if indeed we do, where a dictator takes over, as is happening in too many countries. So I think we are going to win this. I think looking forward to the 100th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, I think we might look back at this 2025 as a bit of a low point in the struggle for democracy, with a really vital United Nations able to have that humanitarian aid, able to represent the voices of the underprivileged, of the disregarded, and able to bang heads together and to have international values and the world order re-established, where we can all live together in the sake of looking after the things that we hold precious and dear. But, you know, we are all responsible. And if we just look to leaders and disregard our own behavior, then I think that is a vital lesson. That was the lesson of the path to light. Those incredible women and incredible men who gave up their lives, often, sometimes they survived, in the Second World War, to care for others, to get the truth out about the evil things that were happening across Europe. So evil that people didn't believe at first what had happened in the concentration camps and what had happened with the bestiality of the Nazi regime. We have to play our parts. And also, we never know when the darkness will descend again.
Sir Anthony, it is always a pleasure to speak to you. I appreciate you sharing your time with us today. Thank you so much, and best wishes for the rest of the afternoon as well.